Hello, brothers and sisters. Raven here. This week is probably going to be shorter than most because this is a very simple topic, but it's one that I feel a need to kind of propose. Something that I think people don't consider as possible enough, don't really look at closely enough. And I think it happens especially for a lot of people coming out of a cult. As I've been hearing from different people, former members, trying to piece together what happened, the history of Homestead, how it all started, things like that, you get many, many stories that seem to contradict. However, whenever that happens, you got a few possibilities. It could go one way where it's one person's story that's right, or it could go to another, or it may be something between, and either side only saw one part of it. To explain, one topic that has come up, that could be a part of it, has to do with where Blair Adams lived while in New York. What was said, what was taught then, was that he lived in a bad neighborhood, very difficult apartment, didn't have much as far as resources, was really just living in a difficult spot and under a lot of trouble. However, the other side of the story from some people is that he didn't at all, that it was perfectly fine, that the issues where he lived were just rumors and weren't true. It wasn't really where he was. It was an area little ways away from where he was, things like that. However, what it very well could have been is what if he lived in a difficult area, but the apartment he picked was probably one of the best in the area. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about, is when you get two sides of the same story, and in a sense, or to an extent, both sides are right, even though they may seem to contradict. Another one of the big ones would be what some people have said, that Blair actually pulled in people by making this claim that if you were with them really following the Lord, you never had to fear cancer. Now, others say that's not the case. Well, what if it wasn't something that was used constantly, but was used in a few places? What if he said to some people, hey, your family, I see cancer there. Come with us. We can heal it. It'll be gone. Something like that. And it wasn't maybe as constantly used as may have been assumed. It's things like that. And the more and more I go through hearing stories from different people, the more and more I find that's the case. Because coming out of a place that indoctrinates so much, that has so many false teachings, it takes time. It takes time to clean your mind out, to really go through it for yourself, and to really find the whole truth. And so talking to many different members is what's so helpful, because then I get the whole picture. I get to see it from each angle. And that's one thing that's helped me really put it together. Now, the question can be, okay, which topics is it that way? And which topics is it that one person is right, the other's wrong? That's where the question is. But for the most part, from what I've seen, both sides usually have a bit of truth to them because they're seeing different sides of it. Now, the reason I bring this up, the reason I want to say this is not just to let everybody know, hey, look, when you're going through these things, when you're talking about this stuff, when you're looking back on it, make sure you're not making the assumption that what you saw is always the case. And I'm not just saying, make sure when somebody sees something you didn't, that they can't be right. That is part of it. That is part of what I want to get across, but that's not the big thing. When you start hearing this, for example, as I've shown on the channel before, there have been stories coming out from different children who left who say they've been very severely abused. And they've shown a letter by parents saying, yes, we did, but not as extreme as he thinks. So this would be another one of those cases. Now, it can make it seem that it's not as bad as may have been thought. But when it comes to something like saying you won't have to worry about cancer, there's a side to that people may not think of that can make this even darker. If you have a teacher who comes out and says, nobody who joins us will have cancer, if they just claim it out there like that, sometimes that can be that they really believe this. That's really where they stand. Maybe they're delusioned. If it's not true, it's just rumors, then they clearly don't believe this. They don't teach this. However, if it is something in between, if it's something where they'll say it to certain people but not everybody, that is disturbing. Because then they're not willing to come out and say it widely, which means they know there's not enough truth to it. But then they'll use it on certain people, which shows you they are flat out lying because they very well know it's false. When you see it that way, where it's both sides of the coin, just not as severe as you thought, it means the deceit is even worse than we thought. Something that can happen a lot is different things people accuse people of, or companies of, groups of, etc. They seem really severe. But then the truth comes out and it's not as bad. And people may not look in this person or company in such a bad light. The problem is, it makes their deceit, their tricks, so much worse in how much more deceptive they are. It's when you've got people coming out and they see it differently, each one. When so many people are seeing it in so many different ways, that means this isn't even just two sides of the coin where it's those who left and those who haven't turned against it. No, it's far more than just the two groups. So you can't even blame that when there's so many different sides of it. Which shows you there's got to be even more deception going on, more secrets. More things have to be hidden away for it to be that way. And as I said, when people leave, they often can be in denial for a while, and certain things for even longer. And when you have a situation like this, where there's so many different versions of the story, that makes it even harder for people coming out to find the real truth. So I wanted to give this warning for two reasons. One, for those who have left, those who got out of the cult, got out of Homestead, always question. Don't just pick out one or two things you saw that you didn't like and stick it as though that's the whole problem and everything else stays the same. Don't go and assume every last thing they taught is wrong. Don't go in and assume everything they said is true, that they didn't lie. Make sure you're always looking at it from an open mind. Because your mind has to be open to clean out the indoctrination. Other side of the coin, for those of you outside Homestead, those of you who weren't there, when the stories seem to get toned down, don't let that make you feel like, oh, they must not be that bad. No, really think about what that means. Think about, how did people come to the conclusion it was that bad? And think about how people may have come to the conclusion it wasn't. Because that can show just how deep the deception went. And that's the real problem here. The abuse, the pain, all that stuff can happen outside of cults. So though it's terrible, though it's awful, though it's the main reason we need to get people out, because that's the most dangerous, what really makes it a cult, what really makes it something that holds people in, despite these things, are the lies, the deceit, the tricks. If we're going to look at it, we need to make sure those lies, the deceit, doesn't have any effect on us, on our thinking, on our perspective. I bring this up partly from just watching a lot of testimonies of people who come out of different cults, different places. And it's really sad because I can just see how difficult it is for them to really not just get away from the thoughts, but really approach everything with an open mind. It's always said that the truth helps with the lies. If you just tell lies and nothing else, it's going to be obvious. It's when you put truth with it that it's so deceptive. So you can't throw out every last thing they say or do. A lot of it, maybe the majority of it, but not all of it. Otherwise, the lies wouldn't hold. And I really pray more people who come out of places like this will start to really look at it reasonably, open-minded, figure it out themselves, get rid of every bit of indoctrination. I'll see you guys next week. God bless.